Hi, fourth graders. Today we're going to begin a unit about life on the frontier for the early European settlers who first came to North America. And eventually you are going to be uh, researching a specific topic about life on the frontier, and you are going to become the teacher and present that to your classmates. But that's a few weeks away. First, we want to get a little background knowledge and some background skills. Today's skill will be summarizing an informational text. So we'll do that with this article, French Relationships with Native Americans. So please make sure you definitely have a pencil and paper. And if you were able to print out this article, that would be excellent. However, if you didn't get a chance to print it, that's okay. Just make sure you can easily access it. And at this point, everyone should have read the article first, because that is one of the main steps to summarizing. You want to, especially with informational text, something pretty short like this, you want to make sure that you first read the whole thing. That gives you what I call the big picture, right? You know, in general, what's the big picture I'm learning about here? And now we'll be able to get into some more of the details. So you've read this, and now I'm going to show you what I would do to summarize this first little section. So when you go, you'll want to reread section by section what you're going to be summarizing. And you can use these major headings, which is a nice text feature of informational text, to help you know where to stop and what to summarize. So I just started by practicing this little introduction. Let me reread it for you. Please follow along on the screen or in your article while I read. France is a European country. About 500 years ago, France began exploring North America. Millions of Native Americans already lived on the continent. Spain and England also explored North America. Both countries are in Europe. The Europeans wanted to colonize North America. Colonization is when many people from one country move to another. They then take over the native people. The Spanish and English mostly fought with the Native Americans. However, France often got along with the Native Americans. And remember, when we read an informational text, it's also important to pay attention to the pictures and the captions and any data tables or sidebars, any extra text features here. So let's look at this image. Jacques Cartier was the first French explorer to interact with the Native Americans. He is depicted above in his first interview with Native people in Hochelaga, which is now Montreal, Canada, in 1535. Okay, so we see some interesting garments like that show the dress of the time period and the interaction between the French and the Native Americans a little bit there. We could go in a lot more into this image. There's a lot of good details to pick out of there, but let's focus back to our summary. So I practiced for this little bit, and there are some keys when you summarize that will lead to a successful summary. Let me show you those. So this is my checklist for a successful summary right over here. I want to know, did I use my own words? Did I say it in a clear and concise way? And did I include the most important information? So we just reread that little section, and after doing so, I was ready to try to summarize this part. And here's what I said. Many European countries wanted to colonize North America in the 1500s. Colonize, I've defined it right here, means they sent explorers and settlers to this new land in order to take control of it from the native people. And the French often got along with the Native Americans, even though the Spanish and English fought with them. So I'll try to get this article a little bit side by side with my summary. Let's see if we can do that better here. So you had, did I use my own words? I didn't type exactly what it had said in these paragraphs word for word, right? Did I use my own words? Ching. I think I did a pretty good job with that, right? The next question would be, did I say it in a clear and concise way? This one I think is sometimes the hardest. and we're going to practice with that a lot throughout these weeks ahead, but I tried to really think through it in my mind, and that meant I had to delete a few times and go back to make sure I was being as clear as I possibly could and not repeating myself. So we'll talk about that more next, but I think it's safe to say this is pretty clear and concise. And then did I include the most important information? Do you think, based on this little introduction, those were the most important things to pull out? Hopefully so. We cha-ching, cha-ching, check those off the list as well. So that's what we're going for when we summarize. Now we're going to try it together with early interactions. So what I'd like you to do is please pause the video, reread just this section on early interactions. Make sure you stop before moving westward, just that section. And then I want you to try your best summary of that. And remember to think about the checklist for successful summary as you're doing that. Play the video when you are ready to get some feedback about possible summaries. Welcome back. So you just took your own practice, and sorry, I forgot to say write it on a separate sheet of paper. Hopefully you understood that you were to write down your summary on a separate sheet of paper. If you didn't, do so. Pause the video, do that now so that you can compare your summary with some examples I'm about to give. So here's one that I tried, and I give you a little hint in this heading. What's wrong with this summary? So this is not completing everything on the checklist, and I want you to kind of try to identify where it fell short. Let's go ahead and read this. Jacques Cartier took some Iroquois people back to meet the king. He was a French explorer. Samuel de Champlain was another French explorer. He came in 1603. He met with the leaders of several Native American groups. After he met with their leaders, they decided to trade with each other. Both groups benefited from this relationship. They got new things to trade. The Native Americans were guides when the French settled Quebec. Okay, so based on what you just read, did I use my own words? Maybe there were a few points where I didn't put it in my own words. Overall, I think I tried to do that. Both groups gained from the relationship, change that to say both groups benefited from this relationship. Just putting in words that were a little easier for me. Okay, now this one. Did I say it in a clear and concise way? Remember, I told you I think that's the hardest one. Do you think this was clear and concise, meaning short and to the point? I don't think this was. I have a lot of repetition here. Kind of see, I said Jacques Cartier took some Iroquois people back to meet the king. He was a French explorer. Then Samuel de Champlain, he came in 1603. He met with the leaders of American groups. After meeting with those leaders, I'm just kind of repeating myself and not shortening it into the most clear way to present that information. Then it says, did I include the most important information? I mean, I think the names of the explorers were important and the fact that they had good relationships with the Native Americans. So that one I kind of hit, but this was the one I really struggled with here. So a look back at your summary. Do you feel like you hit everything on the successful summary, or did you struggle with this too? Was it hard for you to say it in a clear and concise way? If you feel like you didn't on the first try get yours down, go ahead and do so now. Pause the video and try again to revise your summary to get it in a more easy to understand, clear way. Then play the video when you're ready. Here was my revision to my summary. So now I just have the names of the people, and I took some notes. Jacques Cartier, early French explorer, captured the Iroquois people and took them back to meet the king. In my own words, very clear. Samuel de Champlain came in 1603 and established trading deals with the Algonquin and Montagnais Native Americans. So I thought it was important to include the names of the tribes there. It was clearly what he did when he did it. That's another thing you'll look for in summaries. You want to kind of answer those questions: who, what, when, where, why, and sometimes how too. And then finally, I thought this was important. Both groups benefited from this relationship. They traded for goods such as beaver furs. The Native Americans were guides when the French settled Quebec and built trading centers. So now I've again put some more information that I thought was important about beaver fur trade, where their settlement happened, and the fact that they built these trading centers. We're going to read a lot more about that. That was a kind of key detail to include. So this one hits much better on my 3 checklist items for a successful summary. And when you're writing them down, I know you can't bold text in the same way I did here, but if you're just writing it down on your paper, you can underline certain parts of the text that you want to highlight. Also notice I didn't always have to include complete sentences. Sometimes I did, but here I just kind of tried to bullet the information a little bit more to tell you the name and then what he did. So that's something, another tool you can try to make your information and your summary even stronger. Now, lastly, I'll leave you with your job, which is you are going to practice writing a summary for the next 2 sections that you'll turn into Seesaw. So you will, of course, before you summarize, reread. Remember to notice maps and images as you're going, see if those have some important details. So each time you're going to summarize a section, reread it first, and remember to follow your checklist. Good luck.